going to go over here today is essentially like product-led growth concepts that you can like use primarily in terms of thinking about retention for your product. And so it's somewhat theoretical because everything about Amplitude kind of starts with like understanding what matters and how to work together as a team, and less about like tracking everything and measuring everything. It's kind of, you know, there are other platforms that do that, and if you want to do that, then like we're probably not the best solution for that. Now I feel like I need the slides. I think my first slide, if I remember correctly, is actually here. Oh yeah, all right, so who here is kind of understands like the concept of like loops and is actually using some loops like within their own product strategy or marketing strategy? Awesome, a person. Great, and like maybe you guys probably are, and I think that's the really cool thing about product-led growth is like thinking about like moving from linear activities, where when you might think about it as a funnel, and your classic like marketing to like sales and to product handoffs, versus like creating a loop within the product itself or even within your acquisition activities, so you can see some exponential growth and have like some like flywheel effects on the going. Also, I will try really hard not to use too many buzzwords, which, sorry if I use a lot of them, I know it's kind of fine. So first thing, loops, not funnels. These are not meant to be buzzwords, these are real things. So the first thing, I think a lot of companies, and I think like coming from Amplitude and always working in B2B, like every B2B company is super guilty of like using funnels for like their acquisition activities. And the problem with funnels is they're super leaky, where you might like put a ton of money into like paid ad spend, or even like just do that type of marketing, or whatever it is you're using as your acquisition channels, and then like all of that work is handed over into potentially product, and then like the product might actually take over, but like a bunch of like people and like leads or users are leaking along the way. Yeah, so what you end up seeing with like funnels is like people leak out all along the way. There are like two things for this. Like one, siloed activity. Like if your marketing team isn't working with your product team, if your marketing team is only working with your sales team, like red flag, stop doing that. And like another thing is like when this work is super siloed, like people aren't measuring data through the entire journey. So your marketing team might just be looking at like, oh, here's how like my campaigns were like performing. I'm going to look at like early on acquisition signals, and like my work is done, wonderful, and like I'm going to move on to like more acquisition activities, but like not really understand like whether those things are really like working downstream. Like one example I think that is kind of like a more classic example that we all fall into is, let's say we have like this cool like pricing change, right? And you're running like this interesting like pricing promo, and you have a bunch of cohorts, and it seems like it's working and you're getting new users, but because like the marketing team or whoever is running that experiment isn't working with the product team and not following that journey all the way through, they don't realize that like those new pricing like acquisition users are like churning after 7 days, or they're churning after 30 days. I think that's a pretty big loss. But unfortunately, what probably happened is like the marketing team was like, yay, we won. We have like 100,000 new users every month because of our new pricing experiment. And they're like going all in. They're just like, remove the A/B test. This is the champion. And like, what do you end up doing is you lose a bunch of money in revenue because you're not following the entire journey through. So these are the leaks that tend to happen. Everyone sees the leaky bucket thing. This is like the leaky funnel thing. But that's essentially what happens when you have like a linear funnel model. I probably would want to ask everybody who's using a linear funnel model, like I'll go first. Everyone that didn't raise their hand for loops like is probably using a linear funnel, and there's no shame, this is a safe space. What we really want you to do, and when you use like a platform like Amplitude, where it's not just like tracking events and it's not like a question answer analytics platform, is understand like what does that entire user journey look like? Like understand like what it is that you really need to be measuring that matters. And then like how do you build out like the right experiments and the right hypotheses based on like what you're finding. And ultimately what you want to do is build out like an input, like fill that input as much as you can, have them do an action, and the output is that a certain percentage of those people will do the thing that you wanted them to do, and it'll continue to grow from there. And there are a number of things about loops that make it really cool. Is like once you have like a maximized exposure within these loops, then you'll increase your chances to be able to like get more outputs and like more people that are actually doing the thing that you want them to do. Whether it's signing up for a free plan, actually converting into a paid plan, using premium features and upgrading. And just some examples, like this is, I think, one of my favorite examples of like a product-led growth motion that really worked. And I know it's like easy to say like Netflix is perfect, but I think we can all remember, maybe not all remember, but they started as like a DVD rental service. I don't know if anybody remembers that here, if I'm just the oldest person in the room. So they started as a DVD rental service, and then they ended up also working into like a streaming platform that we all know. And what they started doing was this trajectory, this blue line of like kind of working only in linear activities and not thinking about loops. And then they introduced the recommendation engine in the streaming platform itself. And here's where they were like last year. You can see like the growth trajectory is insanely different because they were like investing in like loop activities versus linear activities. So some examples of loop. Miro, everyone loves Miro. We're all like, yes, everyone loves Miro, right? Like I almost wanted to do my entire presentation on Miro, and then someone was like, "You're not John Cutler," and I'm like, "Whoa!" Like those are harsh words. But anyway, so Miro does like a really cool thing where you have like a new Miro user, and it's like super visual and like super collaborative. You create this board, and it just becomes like instantly viral because like I know I have 1,000 Miro boards that I only look at myself, but I also have 1,000 Miro boards that I share with other people. So it's like, totally collaborative platform. And it really lends itself well to like a viral loop. You invite people, hey, this cool thing in Miro, like look what I did. I can explain it visually better than I can like verbally. And then we all huddle around it and like, ta-da. Like some percentage of those people will become new Miro users. That's a loop. UGC loops. So SurveyMonkey has like a really cool example of UGC loops where you're like, hey, I want to learn like ABC. I'm going to create the survey. I'm going to have like a new SurveyMonkey account. I need people to do the things, right? Like I'm not going to like answer all these things by myself because I'm not just alone here. So like people actually are going to respond to those. That will create some really cool user-generated content. Like if I were to send out a survey to everybody here and then like have these really cool polls, that would create some interesting user-generated content. I would go into LinkedIn, hey, I was at Apps Promotion Summit in Berlin. Like these are the results. Nobody's using loops except for one person in the back. And that's like a really great way like to get like the word out for SurveyMonkey is through just like sheer people doing the thing that they want them to do in the product. The sales loop. Anyone doing this? Put your hand down. Anyone doing this? All right, so like most B2B companies are doing this right now. And like this makes a lot of sense and we'll have a lot of compassion for them because it's easier to like throw bodies at the problem versus like understanding how to build a loop in the product. But like I think if anyone here is anyone here on B2B? Oh my God, okay, it's just us. Okay, so this is a loop in itself and it's a very expensive loop and probably not a very sustainable loop where you hire a salesperson, the salesperson actually like lands some deals and they close some contracts. Yay, we can pay for more salespeople. Yay, those people are gonna land some deals and close some contracts and then we're gonna pay for more salespeople. This is a super expensive loop. Please do not do this. None of you are doing this anyways because you're not B2B. But please do not do this thing. And if you're ever like, we're going to break into enterprise and go B2B, like don't do this. Okay, so now that we've kind of understood like loops versus like linear activities, any questions here, by the way, on that? Or we're like solid that we're going to do the loop thing and not the linear thing? Cool. Okay, so now it's like measure what matters. And then I'm going to take a pause here because I think there are a lot of platforms out there, like our tech stack is probably as scary as your tech stack, and we're an analytics company. And like, there are a couple of things that you can go down a rabbit hole with. Like one, you wanna measure everything because you don't know what to measure. So like maybe you're new in your role, or there's like a completely new like way to monetize, or like you're rolling out a new feature, and you kind of get stuck in this like, I don't know what to measure, so I'm gonna track everything and I'm gonna instrument everything in my product. This is a dangerous thing to do. One, it burns people out like very quickly. And then two, like it's very difficult to get data that's not super noisy because you're not already clear on what matters, right? Like you're asking the data to find what's important to you, whereas instead you should just sit together as a bunch of humans and understand like the value that your product is meant to deliver and then aim towards that. So
2 things to be wary of. Metrics are not set in stone. Like, that's okay. I don't know if you guys have teammates where they're like, oh, I can't get into the data because I don't know what questions to ask. And I don't know what data matters. And I don't know how to prioritize the thing. Like, those are all okay. Those are perfectly valid. The most important thing is to get started. So, like, know that, like, all companies, metrics will change, right? Like, the things that you're measuring may change based on, like, new products, rollouts, especially, like, different ways to monetize will change what you measure. So don't get too hung up on the fact that, like, you don't feel like you have this perfect idea of what to measure. The second thing is, like, you'll actually need to start running experiments to understand whether or not there's a relationship between 2 different metrics. So I think what's important here is, like, one, and we'll talk about the North Star metric, like, right after this slide, and I know everyone's super excited. Who's heard of the North Star metric? Yeah, okay, cool. So we're gonna do that. But, like, the cool thing about the North Star metric means, like, metrics aren't set in stone, and your North Star is probably going to stay unchanged for a pretty long time. The second thing is beware of the vanity metrics. So before I came into my session, I, like, looked at how many people signed up for the acquisition zone sessions, or whatever those are called. Way more people are signing up for the acquisition zone sessions, and I feel super, like, scared for them. Because, like, that's a great way to just burn a bunch of money if you don't have your retention strategy figured out. So, like, go ahead, give me that money. Like, it's basically going to be, like, the same amount of business growth for you by just acquiring me with the same dollars. So, like, the vanity metric thing, I think, comes into play. And I'll take Amplitude as an example because we do have a sales-led motion in addition to, like, a PLG motion. Is, like, I'll call it, like, the vanity metric adrenaline hit, where we have a sales team, they have quarterly targets, maybe your teams have targets too, or, like, something that you need to hit. And at the end of every quarter, there is this insane spike of, like, vanity metrics being hit. And it's, like, spike after spike after spike. And people are racing toward its target. And the targets are, like, essentially driven by vanity metrics, and they can't get enough of it. This is, like, a bad sign. Unless you see, like, revenue actually growing with this, then you're probably tracking a vanity metric. And a lot of, like, acquisition, like, activities or, like, linear activities, those are usually driven by vanity metrics. So beware of the top of the funnel acquisition metrics. Nobody here really needs to know that because you're in a retention session. But everyone that you talk to that went to the acquisition sessions, like, tell them that they're measuring the wrong thing. So vanity metrics lack a lot of context. Oh, I got all of these new users. Like, oh, these people clicked on my ad campaign. Oh, like, these people opened my emails. Like, doesn't mean anything if it's not making you money. Vanity metrics have unclear intent. This person signed up, like, people showed up to my workshop. I'm going to sell them Amplitude. Not a good idea, right? Like, if I just counted everybody here and counted this as a success for the business and then said that I should have more money for events and I should do workshops, then, like, there's no clear intent that anyone here is going to buy Amplitude. Is anyone here going to buy Amplitude? Right? Like, it's really hard to tell. And then, like, vanity metrics do not guide action and learning. Like, what do you really learn? And, like, what are you testing? If you're just optimizing for that vanity metric, maybe you'll get an email that's, like, funnier and, like, people will open it more and they'll actually click on it. Maybe you end up, like, going down this rabbit hole of content that you think is, like, super popular. But if you're not really measuring it all the way through, like, you know you're stuck in the linear activity and you're probably just, like, looking at a vanity metric. So the North Star framework. The North Star framework is, like simply put, is, like, really kind of capturing the value that, like, your core product is trying to deliver to customers. So the North Star metric for Amplitude, because we're a collaborative analytics platform, so it's about, like, how teams make decisions, create hypotheses, and, like, run their experiments and learn from that. Our North Star metric is on, like, weekly learning active users and how many charts that they're sharing. It's, like, completely embedded on, like, how collaborative, like, teams are when they're using Amplitude. It's not how many people are using Amplitude for the first time. It's not how many times are people, like, returning to Amplitude and just, like, checking out one thing. Like, we're really trying to understand, like, how good are we at getting teams to work together within the platform, and is that, like, growing over time? For the people here that do have a North Star metric, like, does anybody want to share what theirs is? And, like, we won't share it outside of this room, even though it's being recorded. Like, any, yeah.
Going on a date.
Wait, what?
Going on a date.
Can you, like, Oh, okay. Like what, can you explain more about this North Star metric?
It's a dating app, and we measure people going with it.
And what are some of the inputs that you measure?
In
That-
what sense? The things that it all starts with like, viewing the profile, then it goes into like interacting in one way or another.
yeah,
A deep conversation.
Yeah.
Which is a definition on its own. And then, users going with it.
and what is like your revenue model for your dating app? Subscriptions, got it. So is it like if you get more people to go on, if I go on more dates on your app, am I more likely to pay? Is that like a good leading indicator for me to like,
As a North Star, I want to capture the main value that the user gets, and the user gets paid. Generally, the idea is that there's a correlation between the two, but I wouldn't say that the two are one-to-one.
got it. Okay. We should see how your product looks in Amplitude. Like we should test that one out. Anyone else have a North Star metric that they're willing to share? Yeah.
We have an app for learning sign languages.
Okay, cool.
And one of our core metrics is completed lessons. So just how many lessons the users complete. Since our content, basically, you upgrade and subscribe to unlock all the content.
Yeah.
If you complete a lot of lessons, you need to be upgraded to be an active subscriber.
Got it. So based on the number of lessons you complete, at some point you hit like an inflection point and then you need to start paying?
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that you're measuring to understand like whether or not someone's like taking enough lessons?
Well, the goal would be to create a longer lasting session of not like a long period of learning every day, but more like a consistent
Got
coming
it.
back to the app
Yeah.
because we have a daily streak, so the main target is just to have maybe one lesson a day.
Right.
But go for a long time.
The habit building.
Yeah.
Nice.
Instead of like having people a few hours in the app for a few weeks and then drop off completely.
Nice. That's interesting. Like I'm curious to know how you got to that North Star metric, but we could probably talk about it later. And you had one, a North Star metric.
We look at the number of coupons. We are a grocery cashback app.
Uh-huh.
So when the user does a coupon, that means that he's been buying the product in the supermarket.
Yeah.
So the more coupon we generate, the more engaged our users are.
Right.
The most likely we are going to be able to sell campaign to our B2B partners, which are the FMCG brands.
Interesting.
So our users are not bringing any revenue. The
Right.
brands are paying to be
Right.
in the app. But we need
Yeah.
more audience and more users to be able to deliver the amount of sales that we guarantee to our partners.
Yeah.
And number of coupons per active user. is
Right.
something we look at.
So there's like, this is a really good example. There's a really healthy debate on like the marketplace North Star metric where there's a user-sided one and then a seller-sided one. And that gets complicated and super interesting. And like a crazy lively debate. So like, I don't know, you should probably be plugged into that because like marketplaces are weird and maybe they need to have their own thing. Because there are like generally 3 types of engagement games that we think of when we're coming up with the North Star metric. And that's again, like what's the value that you're delivering to like your customers? There's the attention game and like TikTok, Facebook, Spotify, Netflix, like everything is attention game these days. Transaction game, which I think that's super interesting because on the user side, there's definitely a transaction game there, but on the seller side with any marketplace, it might be the productivity game. So Amazon, also an interesting marketplace, but we can think of it transaction games like Zalando, even though their website is, I don't know if anybody works there, but it's hard to navigate. Like I can't find shoes on Zalando, even though there's a million shoes. So like they're definitely doing the transaction game. And then the productivity game, marketplaces are in that space as well because like the people, like the sellers and the vendors are definitely like saving a bunch of time, super efficient. They're finding like users immediately. Most B2B companies are productivity. Like we're there to like help save time and like help people gain efficiencies or teams gain efficiencies. So Trello, like all of the Atlassian's products, like pretty much any B2B like SaaS company out there is probably in the productivity game. Maybe let's just do like a little show of hands. Like who here thinks their product is in the attention game? Oh yeah, for sure you. Oh yeah, dating. Interesting. The dating app one. Maybe that's productivity. Maybe it's transaction, and maybe it's also attention. You're in your own category as well. How about transaction game? Who's in the transaction game? There are not 100% of hands that are going to be raised at the end of this poll. All right. So some people. Why are you not sure?
Because I was unsure if it's attention or transaction game.
What is your product do?
It's like a product scanner, and you scan the barcode of a product, cosmetics, for example, and
Yeah.
then we tell you if there are any bad ingredients like microplastic or cancer stuff.
And who do you consider to be your main user?
The end consumer.
The end consumer.
Yeah, so you use the app in the supermarket and you want to buy, I don't know, lipstick or sunscreen.
Do they buy through your scanner? Do they like transact?
They can, but mostly it's at the point of sale. So if they're already in the store and
Yeah.
then they scan the sunscreen and then we say, okay, good sunscreen, then it's most likely going to buy. But then
Right.
when we say it's bad product, maybe get this one that's better, maybe then they're going to buy it online.
So this is like challenging with not knowing, like maybe another way is like fine. So it's the point of the attention game is it allows teams to kind of focus in on like where is the value that they're delivering and not like conflate the value with other things. This is why marketplaces are weird because it's two-sided. But like, are you like fairly clear on like the value that you're driving to your users?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where it gets a bit tricky, right? When you're like, oh, it could be productivity, it could be transaction. Like, then it makes me wonder, like, you know, what is that North Star metric? Like, what is like that clear value that you know you're trying to like deliver to your customers?
For us, it's product huge. So, for example, in the app, the use case in the supermarket,
Yeah.
where you don't necessarily buy it, but then if you go on our website and our domain,
Right.
and you may be already at home and you're just like, okay, I'm going on vacation,
Right.
I'm looking for sunscreen, for example,
Right.
then I can buy it at home with my.
And you can buy it there. Yeah. Okay. It does feel like it's transaction. But that's interesting because it's also a bit of a marketplace too. I feel like we need to do a marketplace game too. And then the last one, who's in the productivity game? And then everyone who didn't answer, we'll do this again. Who is in the attention game? All right, more people. Okay. And the transaction game. Okay, now we're getting everybody. And the productivity game. Okay. Are you not a B2B company, but you're in the productivity game?
Not really. It's two prosumers. It's a helicopter app in the end. So we are helping people record videos.
Interesting. Could be attention too, depending on how you monetize. Interesting. Okay. So this is like, we have a North Star playbook if you want to learn more about it. I have a bunch of links with resources. And then if you don't want to like give over your email address, just send me and I'll send you the ungated version. But like this is essentially like a team at the Burger King like app, right? So they have a digital team and they're trying to get like more mobile orders to their app. And their North Star is like number of digital transactions per user. Their North Star is not revenue, because I think we all know like revenue is a lagging indicator. There's not a lot you can do if you're just measuring revenue. Like what are you changing? What are you running experiments are on like that? At that point, it's like too late when you're just measuring revenue. What you do need to measure is like the thing that derives revenue. And in the case of Burger King, it's like the number of digital transactions per user. If they can move that lever, then they're going to get revenue. And like squad goals is really just another way of saying inputs. Like Burger King calls it squad because it's cute. But like each team at Burger King and the digital team is in charge of either the new user activation input. So are they able to increase new user activations? There is a registration team at Burger King. And then there's the frequency of coupon redemption, which is like super specific, but they've learned along the way that like people really like cheap meals. People like who shop or like eat at Burger King also like discounted meals. Like maybe they're like moms like me and they want to like use a bunch of coupons to feed their kids. So like there are like teams that are now in charge of like new user activation, registration, and then the couponing system. And from that, there's like leading indicators that feed into that. The whole point of this, like one, you don't have to replicate what Burger King did, but they took like what looked like a bunch of like messy metrics where you can just track everything. And they created like this view where everything now that they were doing leads back into digital transactions per user. So the new user activation team isn't working in this weird silo. and they're like doing a bunch of stuff and like running a bunch of experiments to just get new users. Like they're really focused on like activating them in order to get more transactions per user. Same thing with the coupon team, same thing with the registration team. And that's kind of the beauty of the North Star metric. And like back to my previous point of like not needing to measure and instrument everything, is like measure what matters. Like really understand like what game that you're in and like what is it that you're trying to like figure out and like drive value for your customers. So in the spirit of like actually not knowing what time it is, I'm gonna skip this one. Does anyone want to do like a little North Star exercise, or should we move on to retention? I actually don't know how much time we have left. Move on to retention. All right, if you want to do a North Star exercise, come meet me at the Amplitude table and I will do it with you. And who knows, maybe we'll change your business. Okay, so how can you apply this? And this is like back to the like original thing of like, yes, everyone has to do acquisition, but you must start with retention first, because if you only do acquisition, then you might as well give your money to me. Because if you haven't figured out how to retain and monetize and engage your users, one, it's a pretty boring job for anybody in product. And then secondly, like you're just burning your money because you're only acquiring new user after new user and new user. You're in a linear activity. And so the big thing here is like a lot of people will not stay in your app, right, until you figure out your retention game. And that's a bummer if you're putting a lot of money into paid spend. The other thing is like the customer acquisition cost has gone up like dramatically. This slide was made before the economy started tanking really hard. So I think this number is actually scarier than what it is now. And it's also tough, right? Like if you're just paying for users and that's all you're doing and that's how you're monetizing, like you're not gonna have much of a runway for very long, not to be like scary about it. And then it's becoming more and more expensive to like keep the users that you have, because you have to keep throwing like new things at them, different pricing models, more coupons, more ways to keep them. And they may not even be staying for the long run if you haven't figured out like how to really deliver value to them quickly. And some apps, like you'll need to deliver value to them like in the same session. That's hard, need to measure a lot of stuff. Some like products like us, like it takes us a little bit longer to deliver value, and that's hard in a different way as well. So there's just a couple things to keep in mind is like getting to that road of value like looks different for whatever business you're in. So a couple success stories that we had very recently that we thought were really cool. One is this like wearable like tracker called Aura. I don't know if anyone here has it. I've never seen one in real life. It's a ring. And what they do is they sell this ring, and it's like this wearable health tech thing. And like with it comes like an app as well. And what they were doing is they thought like, oh, we have to give people like half a year of like, you know, a free trial for the app before we can start charging them. And like, I don't know where this assumption came from, but they were like 6 months is what we need to give away for free in order for people to like build a habit, for it to be sticky enough for them to continue paying. And then they used Amplitude, ran a bunch of experiments, and they saw they actually just needed to give 1 month away for free. So one, they saved a ton of money, and they were also able to increase like the number of people they were to convert from like free to paid, like very quickly. So with Trello, but this was super interesting, where before the pandemic, even though they're kind of like a productivity, like I thought they were already built for remote teams, they saw like a lot of usage actually dropped off during the pandemic, and they weren't quite set up with the right like holistic views across teams. And so what the Trello team did was used Amplitude to understand the different user journeys, and they found that they needed to create these more holistic, like non-siloed views across project teams. And when they were able to like roll out those new features and then reviews, they like the really cool thing is they were able to convert like premium and enterprise trial conversions, which is kind of the holy grail in the B2B SaaS world. So I'm going to move forward super quickly because I think I'm not taking too long. What I wanted to go through here is like the engagement loop. And this is where everything kind of begins when you're thinking about retention, is that like new user to like meeting the aha moment to the actual like value delivery moment, the value exchange moment. And there are some cool things that you can do in Amplitude to measure this. But like going from curiosity to aha moment where like, yeah, I'm going to potentially sign up for like a new plan, isn't like sorry, I'm just going to start over. People are leaving and it's kind of throwing me off. So like getting to the aha moment is something that you kind of need to nail from the beginning, right? So like how quickly can you deliver that moment of like, this is super cool. Like, I can't believe this product does that. Like for Amplitude's aha moment, a lot of it is like, I can't believe I can do like an end-day retention analysis in just seconds and not need like a data analytics person. I can't believe I can just switch over to unbounded retention with like a flip of a switch without needing like a data analytics person. Or I can't believe I can like measure my like onboarding journey just by having a bunch of events put into the order and then see where all the drop off is all the way through. Like, I can't believe I can see how my experiments are running. Those aha moments are like super critical to get to very quickly. And a lot of times you need to get that within like the same or the first day that someone signs up for an account. The second thing that's a bit harder is the actual value exchange. And this is where this is a recurring loop for some time until they end up paying for your product itself. So if we'll just look at the activation moment for now, and I'll show you a cool thing in Amplitude, and then we can all go have lunch. So onboarding is like that first moment of like, hey, user delight, and then I'm going to hit my aha moment. That's the first part of activation, and then aha moment goes to first value exchange. Cool thing in Amplitude. So we have like this demo experience. It's dummy data. It's not Spotify, but this is essentially a music subscription app. And I want to look at like how many of my new users are actually turning into like the value, they're actually doing the aha moment, which is playing a song. So I'll go to funnel analysis. You can do events in this order. I think it's like main screen. Yeah, so they've hit my first page, totally new user. And then they've like created an account. I don't know why I'm doing this. Profile. Sorry. Hate when they like rename the events. Okay. So user sign up. And then from there, they're probably going to search for a song. Yeah, so they're going to search for a song. And then here's my aha moment. Like, why am I in Spotify? I actually want to play the thing. And we want to look at new users. So we've paid a bunch of money. We've acquired these new users. What are they doing? And I'm looking at like the 30-day. Something is weird here. Something got weirder. Okay, bad. Here, I'm just gonna do it like this. So I'm looking at 30 data, but it's probably like given like the subscription model, it probably needs to be 7 day, because if I haven't played a song within 30 days, like I'm never gonna play a song. So if we're looking at the number of people who have like signed up, there's not an awesome, this is not looking good for them, where they're getting like 99.8% drop off. And then there's like search content. From there, like things are looking okay. Like once you sign up, you actually stick around, look for a song. Like I love Rihanna's songs right now. And then you play the content. All of these things look really decent, although I would be kind of concerned by the fact that you do get some drop off, like playing content and searching content. But the biggest area of opportunity here is this insane drop off. And like there are a number of things that you can do, right, to fix this part of it. I don't know if anyone has like this level of view already with their analytics platform. And then what's also interesting is like you can start running experiments off of that, and you can start thinking about different things that you can test to move the needle here. What I would suggest is like don't even stop there, and like understand like how many of these people, maybe not in the same session, but just for this purpose, like how many end up purchasing premium? Probably low, right? Like not that many people will sign up for an account and then purchase within that same session. People do, wonderful. Something is working here. Like I would say if I worked on this team, I would actually build a cohort out of these people and understand like how did they get here? What do they look like? What are the devices that they're using? Like what kind of makes them similar, and how do I replicate this? Because that's awesome. If I can get somebody, acquire them, have them create a free account, and then actually turn into premium in that same moment, like this is ideal. So that's one thing that you can also do. Like I actually thought we would see like very, very few people. But like understanding what this cohort is and like what they look like and how to replicate is one of the things that you can do with this data. And then the second thing is like, how do I make this better and like make sure that I don't have a 99.8% drop off? I think we're at time, so thank you very much. I'm sorry about the late start. The last thing is we do have a bunch of resources here. So we'll get this out to you and then you can go nuts.